Welcome back to the 1090 podcast, where life's 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it. I'm here with Kimberly Howard and Ryan Garner. Ryan, intro today, let's talk about Torchy's Tacos in Houston.
Yeah.
Where do those tacos rank for you?
They were that, well, the way you're prefacing this, they were that high for you?
Oh, they're on my list for sure. I was just curious where they're at on yours.
I mean, I'd give them like a solid B+ letter grade.
How
like
dare you?
8.5.
Name a better taco right now.
Tacos Lopez on 7800 South. And
That's a good answer.
I need to write that down.
It is. That place is actually pretty good.
really good. Yeah.
Torchy's Tacos is better though.
Then Tacos Lopez?
Yeah.
See, not for me. Tacos Lopez was good. And what was it called? The taco that we got? What was it called?
It was called, I don't even remember. But when they brought it out to you, it literally looked like you went to your freezer.
Yeah, it did not look
nuked
good.
this chicken patty in the microwave. No, it did not
really
look great.
Gross.
And I asked the lady, I'm like, what should I get? Because we're in Houston. I'm like, I'm from out of town. Like, what do we get? And she's like, get this. So she puts it on our table. I'm like, no.
Yeah. It was called like the trailer park or something?
Yeah, I think that is it.
Which
Anyway,
makes sense.
the minute I bite into this thing, it's
Really good.
so good.
Yeah. So
Anyway, Torchy's Tacos is good. If you live in Utah and you want to make $1 million, you start a Torchy's Tacos chain.
I agree. The
And
queso,
You just ring it in.
also really good.
But we had a great trip to Houston. Thanks for Nevo, Sterling Brandley for hooking us up. Garrett George, it was good to see him there. We have another brutal episode with Kimberly Howard today.
Brutal.
And we're glad to have her on. And we'll get after it. Life's 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it. Welcome back to the 1090 podcast, where life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it. Sorry. Should I do another one?
You're good.
I had a tickle in my throat.
I think the people understand.
Yeah, they get it. I don't even know if that's a true percentage. Like, is it? Like, no one really knows. Is it 50-50? It kind of feels more like 90-10, honestly.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, it's a good quote. Anyway, welcome back. We're here with Kimberly Howard. Kimberly, should we tell them how we met real quick? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We met through Brad Bailey,
Who's also been on this podcast.
Yeah, and then so Brad Bailey, he lost his brother. And you just jump in whenever. I might be totally butchering this, but then he went and buys a boat off KSL. I'm already butchering.
He was looking for a boat.
You just take it over from here, Kimberly.
So he was looking for a boat on KSL, which he says that he doesn't even know why he was looking for a boat in November. But he came across what happened to be my son-in-law's boat. And he calls on the boat. And my son-in-law is very private. He's a very private person. He's very personable and a wonderful person. But he's not one to put his business out there, ever. So when Brad asked him, hey, this boat looks amazing, why are you selling it? And he said something about like, oh, we had an accident in the family. And Brad kind of pushed him a little bit on it, which is kind of rude if you think about it.
It is, but you know Brad.
Brad,
That's just Brad.
He said, do you want to hear a sad story? And so he told the story of my son who was killed in a boating accident on Lake Powell. And Brad, it kept him up that night. He couldn't stop thinking about him. And so he went at like 2:00 in the morning and looked up the obituary and was like kind of figured out who we were and where we were. And he ended up the next day riding his motorcycle again in November in northern Utah. but he knew he had to do it. That's the kind of cool synchronicity part about this, because I had bought my husband the same color Harley for his birthday a few months before. And literally that's the only reason I answered the door, because I was not answering the door.
The synchronicities, yeah.
Yep.
And
So-
it's cool because the motorcycle matters. It just does.
It does.
And it matters that it's in November. And it's mattered that he was thinking of you. Like, I think that all matters to me anyway.
It all lined up. And I kind of like have this little picture in my mind of Keaton like back there whispering in his ear, like, my mom needs you. And because 6 months down the road, you know, everybody's like, they're still checking on you, but everybody's gone on with their lives, which they need to.
Yeah,
like,
rightfully
literally,
so.
they can't stop their lives, but you are still in the depths of hell trying to figure out what the F just happened. And I was depressed. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I was not in a good place. And my husband had prayed actually the day before that God would intervene somehow. And because he didn't know what to do for me. And I'll get into this later, but when I answered the door, he had this like full on
big beard. Yeah.
Sunglasses on, like he didn't even take his sunglasses on, full leathers. And he's like, "Are you Kimberly?" And I kind of like backed up a little bit. I was like, "Yes." And he's like, actually, he didn't ask if I was Kimberly. "Are you Keaton's mom?" That's what he said. "Are you Keaton's mom?" And that's where I was like, okay, why are you asking me this? And I said, yes. And he said, "I heard about your son." Ooh, I can feel it in my body. "I heard about your son, and I just want to tell you how sorry I am." And he handed me a stuffed monkey and a book. And I said, "Thank you." I was touched. And he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, yes. And I hugged him. And as I hugged him, I said to him, "God bless you." And that was the whole of our interaction that day. That was it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like an angel. And like, it was so crazy that happened. And it uplifted me for a minute.
And you just said it, but everyone else is kind of moving on and you're just kind of feeling like, okay, like,
how do I move on?
Yeah. And then he shows up.
So it felt like I was known by the universe. And it was a year later, actually, because I just found the letter. And we got it on Keaton's death day. Brad wrote me and told me that had impacted his life, that he had been bitter since his brother's death. And when I said, "God bless you," for whatever reason, it melted his heart and changed him. And so we became friends, and the rest is history.
So he gave me and Blue a teddy bear as well. And then they had the event for him. So everyone that he gave a teddy bear to, and how long has he been doing it?
10 years.
10 years, yeah. And so we go to the part, and I think you help organize it and plan it and everything. And anyway, I ran into you there, and I met like 40 people I could have on my podcast there. I was
twisted, but okay.
I was so emotional in that. I could just feel it, I think. I was just so emotional. I couldn't even, because they asked me to say a little something, and I just basically cried, and not really even sure what I said, but basically thank you. But I just love being in a room. Like, everyone in that room lost somebody. And that was a cool, that might sound really messed up, but it was like a really cool feeling for me anyway. Like, wow, like, I didn't feel like an alien from another planet or something. Like, what's on these people's minds is what's on my mind. It was cool. Let's go back to Lake Powell, Keaton. 10 years ago.
So 10 years ago in June, Scott's family had a tradition. They'd been going to Powell for like 25 years. They had a houseboat.
I love Lake Powell.
And we went a few times a year. And Keaton loved Lake Powell. From a very young age. I remember him being like 3, and we would say, "Oh, we're going to Salt Lake." And he's like, "We are?" And it's like, "No, not Lake Powell, Salt Lake." Like, it's not, it wasn't
the
what we thought it
opposite
was
of Lake
from-
Powell, actually.
Right, exactly. Like, not Lake Powell. But we were down there on a family trip.
Real quick, how many people are in your
So
family?
we're a blended family. He had 5 when we got married, and I had 1, and he adopted my daughter, and then we had Keaton together.
No
So
way.
Keaton was our only little.
Wow.
And like to back up, Keaton was kind of a little bit of a miracle too. Scott had, I don't know, you're supposed to say on this on a podcast, but he'd had a vasectomy, and I was younger than him and had only had the 1 daughter and wanted another child. And so he got it reversed, and there was only like a 2% chance we were going to get pregnant. And I had miscarried the month before, and decided like, okay, it's too much pressure. Like, we have 6 kids, we're fine. I don't need another kid. So I went to the doctor to get back on birth control, and she's like, well, you can wait till your next cycle, or you can just start taking it. And I decided to wait, and it never came because Keaton was here.
No way.
So that's how
Wow.
Keaton got to us. Anyway.
Sorry, real quick. Do you ever watch The Office?
Mm-hmm.
Snip, snap, snip, snap. I base 99%. I also have a vasectomy, so we'll call it even.
Okay.
I don't mind saying it.
Yeah.
And I base 99% of my knowledge on vasectomies on The Office, off that scene. I hope we can get it switched back if we need to. I don't know.
Well, I'm here to tell you it is possible.
Snip, snap. Do you have any idea the toll that 3 vasectomies has?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Scott could probably speak to that. Bless his heart, because that was not very easy. But yeah, but he was meant to come. He was meant to be here, and he really did glue our family. We'd been married for about 3 years, I think, at that point, and he glued our family together. And he was all light and love and never stopped moving. The kid never stopped moving, and he was smart. And I don't know. I mean, he was still a 5-year-old little boy, so he was kind of a shit sometimes, but he was really such an amazing.
Yeah, we were
little
chatting before we hit the record button, and I think I asked you how long it's been, and you said 10 years since Keaton passed away. And then there's a little pause, and then you're like, that little snot.
A little twerp.
That little twerp. Or was that it?
Yeah.
A little twerp. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's how it is sometimes. Like, man.
How dare you?
And Kimberly, isn't it weird, like, being a parent, like, even when they're dead, like, you don't stop thinking about them or worrying about them.
Every day.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah, every day. And he'd be 16 now. And I still think about him. But honestly, they're around. So.
I talk to my kids all the time. When you talk to Keaton, is he still 5? Mm-mm. He's not 5. He's 16.
He's okay. So like, I have some family members who have some gifts, who have seen him since he's passed, and then I've been to mediums, and like, I mean, however I can contact him, I'm open to it. And people who are completely separate and have no commonality whatsoever, I'll talk about him being a man, and he's large and muscular, like a man.
And can you like picture his face too?
Mm-hmm.
That's so wow. Yeah. I wonder if that will happen to me right now. I just still see him. Frankie's too. Yeah. But this is weird. Like when I picture Frankie, she's still 2. Mm-hmm. But I was talking to her the other day, and it's like she was giving me advice like as an adult. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was very weird. But I knew it was her.
I think they can show up however we need them to, honestly. Right. And at first, when I first heard that, I was actually very angry. I was like, no, he's my 5-year-old son. I need him to be my 5-year-old son that I can hold in my arms, that I can still relate to on that. It took me a minute to be okay with him not being 5 anymore. So,
and that's what I wonder too. Like, if there is a heaven, we're just going off the rails a little bit here, but like, no, like if there is, like, are we all 35? Am I their dad? So. I don't. No, like I just
for like 24. I'm just kidding.
No, but I think about those things all the time. I'm like, what are we gonna be doing? What is like anyway?
Yep. I think their job though becomes us. Like, I think they become our angels. I think they are invested in our lives and what we're doing. I think they care. Yeah, I think they're around. And I think I learned that through losing my dad to begin with. And then I think that they're together. I feel like I think I mentioned, I'm not sure if we were recording yet, but that today is the anniversary of my nephew's death. And he was just born a few months before Keaton.
And he passed away
Passed away 9 months ago.
9 months
in
ago.
April. 3 days after his 16th birthday. And
I'm so sorry.
thank you. It's been very, very interesting to relive that. And in fact, I'll be honest. So my family went up to be with my brother and sister-in-law. And then the next weekend was the funeral. And I went up there and I couldn't get myself to go to the funeral. I'm not super proud of that, but I'm saying that because you never know how having that happen again in our family, it impacted me. And you wouldn't think it would have because it was 10 years later, but it still did. And it's brought up a lot of grief, like I've had some anger, just all of the stages, I guess.
Yeah, still flipping through.
And just mad that this is happening. And I can't, I know you say don't compare grief, right? But people have lost a lot more, but I'm just there's just a part of me that was so angry that we were going through this again in our family again. Really, we've already done this. I kind of felt like I had already taken that burden on for the family.
Seriously, hey,
so we
leave
don't
us
have to do this
alone.
anymore.
Exactly. We've been through enough, but that's life doesn't care.
No.
It has no mercy.
It doesn't.
And yeah, mention that timeline. So 2003, your dad passed away.
It was 93.
Sorry, 1993, your dad passed away in a car accident. How old were you?
19.
So we don't even have enough. I'm so sorry. Your 10% so shitty. We can't even can't even respect your dad enough, or
The
good
loss
enough
of that.
Yeah, we can't even talk about it. Sorry, man. We're focusing on Keaton today. But that happens 1993, 2003,
13.
2013 rolls around.
20 years.
And
actually, they were both born in August and died in June. My dad and my son.
Yeah, so 2013 rolls around, Keaton passes away. And then 2023, your nephew passes away.
Yep.
And this is a fear I have. One of the things I struggle with day to day, and I don't think I talk about it enough, is I just worry about Blue dying randomly.
Sure.
And now I met this girl, Sammy. I'm in love with her. Now I'm scared that she's just going to die.
That's trauma brain.
And I do a good job of not letting that dictate what I do. I bought Blue a dirt bike. We're going into this thing. No one's getting out of here alive.
Yep.
Bring it on. But that's a fear I have, is I'm going to get a phone call from his school. Blue is unresponsive. I don't know. I just think of any scenario. And here you have, and people struggle with this. The minute their life starts going good again. I have this too. It's okay, when's that other shoe going to drop? And it all goes to shit again. Yeah. 1993, 2013, 2023. What mindset, what are you doing? Explain to me your mindset of how you get through this day to day with that fear and that past that you have to carry.
This year, I finally was able to let it go.
What do you mean by that?
I've grieved because of my nephew Elijah's death, and that has brought stuff up. But a switch has flipped in me, and I am doing what you're talking about. I'm buying the dirt bike. I'm not buying a dirt bike. I might buy a Harley though someday.
You should get a Harley.
Anyway.
Help Brad deliver some bears.
Right.
We'll start a little motorcycle gang. I have an Indian motorcycle right now.
Well, you might have to get a Harley though.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, I'm just you know what? It's enough. And stuff, I guess my biggest lesson is stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to happen. Regardless of whether you're hyper vigilant and not letting anybody okay, where is everybody, and being all, again, trauma brain, that's our ego's way of saying okay, we can control this somehow. It's bullshit. Right. We cannot control anything.
And I think I 100% agree with what you just said. And I also realized because my wife Courtney was the best person. And I can go down the line and talk about my kid's brother and nephew and say the same thing. So if being a really, really good person doesn't really matter in terms of getting the blessing to save your
That's
life,
fair.
send the sand in the other direction. No one
Right.
even has to know. If that doesn't matter, then really what's going on here? And then what I learned is it doesn't really matter if you're good, whatever that means,
Mhm.
but you still have to choose to be good.
Mhm.
And I think somewhere in my brain that that clicked. Like, oh, like, because I always grew up, you be good, you go to heaven, you be good, you get a blessing, you be good, you get this, you be good.
Same.
And it's like, oh, like,
Bad stuff happens to good people,
right. There's actually no,
and good stuff happens to bad people.
yeah.
It's all just experience.
Yeah.
Like, we're literally just here to experience.
And I think it's the quote, life's 10% what happens to you. And the purpose of your life
Mhm.
is how are you going to respond to it?
Mhm.
And that's basically it, at least in my
I agree.
perspective.
Totally. Yep.
So you have this blended family.
Yep.
You have Keaton.
And I fell off the face of the planet after Keaton died. I'm going to be super honest about that.
Okay, before we talk about that, can we talk about the day of the boating
Oh,
accident?
yeah.
Real quick,
Yes.
Kimberly, do you mind pulling the mic down just a little bit?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel
Perfect.
Okay. And I keep clicking. Maybe need to take my rings off.
I haven't even noticed.
Shouldn't show up too much, but sometimes the mic gets in front of the faces, and we got to see your pretty face.
Thanks. Okay.
Love the glasses, by the way.
Thank you. Glasses are kind of my thing.
Yeah.
So we were at Powell, family trip with Scott's family. And the day before
Was the best day ever, probably.
No.
Like, oh, damn it. Sorry. It usually is like the best day.
it was.
And then,
I had that with my dad though, where just before he died, like he and I kind of butted heads. Well, we were kind of a lot alike while he was alive. And the night before, I had come home from work, and he was laying on his bed. He was a very hard worker. He's laying on his bed, kind of decompressing. And I walked in and I laid down by him, which I never did. And we just laid there. We didn't say a word. We just laid. I was kind of cuddled up next to him. And then the next day he passed. So I did have that
that is
moment.
so weird.
It is weird. And I had a moment like that with Keaton, which I'll
Like,
tell
you still
about.
think about that?
Oh, I do.
Well, how long has it been? Like
30 years.
30 years, like, yeah.
Yeah. So with Keaton, the day before, I was crawling out of my skin. Like I had to get out of there. I couldn't stand to be down there for one more second. It was the strangest feeling, and I remember it so clearly. And my brother, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were coming home the day before, and I told Scott, I'm like, I got to get out of here. I can't be here for one more second. And he's like, well, obviously I'd rather you stay, but if you need to go, then go. So I went home. I wasn't there. And I had gone shopping with my mom that night. I was a little bit like, hey, I've got the house to myself, like a little bit of me time, that kind of thing. Oh, before I left, this was the moment with Keaton. I asked if he wanted to come home with me. And he named about 10 reasons why he wanted to come home. Well, nobody's really down here my age. He was quite a bit younger than all the other kids in the family.
Keaton's really going through it, though. He's a thinker.
He's a thinker.
I love it.
He is constantly thinking.
It reminds me of Blue.
Yeah.
And he's 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. He's like, I could do this and that. And my toys are here. I could play Beyblades, like all of the things.
Not the Beyblades.
Yeah, the
Riggins
Beyblades.
loved Beyblades. Yeah.
And he's like, and then he paused and he said, I think I'll stay. I mean, he chose to stay. There was part of him that knew this was going to be his path, and that has been comforting to me. But so I left, and Scott talks about how that next day was he was very down, which is not him. He's a very optimistic, loves to go, go, go. He was just kind of like Keaton, actually, in an older person's body, but they just kind of hung out all day. And it was like 6:00 in the evening, and they decided, the kids talked him into taking him tubing, and that's what they were doing. And Keaton was sitting at the front of the boat, and one of the kids had been sitting by him and then went to go be with the older teenagers in the back of the boat. And it happened just super fast. Like they were only going 11 miles an hour. It's interesting. The Daily Mail did an article on it. A couple of other, there was a couple of other news outlets that did an article on it, and the comments that people would give, like, well, that he should have been wearing a life jacket. Or I'm like, dude, he was wearing a life jacket. Like, just all of the things, right? And why was he sitting in the front of the boat? And I don't even know all of those things, but they hit a bump, and he went out the front of the boat, and then the prop got him. So it was instant. I don't know. Well, I do know. I don't know that my psyche would have handled that. I don't know that it would have. And I don't know why my whole freaking family had to be down there and experience that. And every single person, this is the other interesting part too, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but in my head, had I been there, I would have been sitting next to him. It wouldn't have happened. And every person in that boat was like, if I had just done this, it wouldn't have happened. If I had just done that, it wouldn't have happened. Like, we all took responsibility for his death on ourselves, because again, that's trauma, that's control. How do we control this so it doesn't happen again? But
Yeah, I do think if you, because you just think about it all, it just
Oh, you
weighs
do.
on your mind, and you just play it over and over, and eventually, because it doesn't make sense, you come to the conclusion like, oh, it was my fault.
Yep. And again, I can control it. I can control next time. If it's my fault, then I can control it next time. I can do something different so nothing happens like that again, I think.
I need to say this before. You said you asked Keaton if he wanted to come home with you. And he made the comment like, that gives you peace of mind because this was his path. And I've never thought about that for my story until you said that, because the weekend of our family reunion was the same weekend I was coaching this basketball tournament. And this is my first tournament as the new coach at this job, so I didn't feel like I could leave. And Courtney and I, we decided like we're not going to the family reunion. And then that Friday she came up to me, she's like, Mason, I really want to take the kids and I want to go. And one thing I've always struggled with my grief over Courtney is I just think she's so sorry. Like, if she could come see me for 10 seconds, she would say, I love you. I'm so sorry. I know she'd tell me those two things. And so I struggle with that. But then hearing your story, like, maybe I could look at that at a different perspective. Like, she kind of chose to go last second with the kids. Maybe I should have a better perspective of maybe that is the path that she kind of knew that. But then you get into the realm of everything's supposed to happen for a reason, and I don't like that realm, at least not yet.
Right.
But no, like that does kind of give me peace and comfort, because one thing that I have a lot of guilt with is I think if I was in the car, maybe nothing else changes. Like, maybe we all die except Blue. But then that means Race and Ryder wouldn't be in the car. Like, if I went to the family reunion, at the very least, at least Race and Ryder are alive. So I have a lot of guilt with that. And it's hard for me to be around Keisha and Rand and Faith sometimes. Because I don't know if they think that. But yeah, I struggle with that. But hearing that comment, I never like, maybe that was the path that needed to happen that day. And maybe I need to be more courageous and willing to accept that there is a plan. But that just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, I had to say something because that just kind of hit me right in the chest when you said that. So thank you.
I don't know that I believe in a plan anymore, but I do believe strongly, and I'm going to say this as a statement: we choose when we come and we choose when we go. Period.
Yeah.
However that happens, however it looks, whatever it is, I don't know if we choose how we go, but we choose when we come and we choose when we go. And I also want to point out too, you know, with you having a hard time being around your sister-in-law and her kids, had they been in the same car, then would your family still be alive? Like,
I haven't thought about that.
it all, like, again, that's where you can't what if. I mean, you can
You can, but
But
you
it
can play the
doesn't
what if. I mean,
all day long.
you play the what if game long enough, it gets weird. Like,
It,
like why did we create anything? Why are we even alive?
Why are we even here?
Yeah.
Where did we come from? Where are we going?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But honestly, like, the same could be said the opposite direction. And again, that's that trauma brain that I'm talking about, where you are trying to, like, if I had just been there, then this wouldn't have happened. Like, you had no control over that. And you
Yeah.
were all exactly where you were supposed to be at the time that you were supposed to be there. Because it's too random to not be purposeful.
It is the most, yeah.
It's the hugest,
The
stupid
timing of
mind
it
F
is
in the
insane.
whole world. It's insane.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. It happened like in a way that is so bizarre that it had to have been perfect.
So your story's like mine. Then you weren't there when it happened, so you got a terrible phone call. Then
I got a terrible phone call. I was in Bed Bath & Beyond. I remember it very, very clearly. And my mom's phone rang. He had tried to call mine. My mom's phone rang, and she picked it up and was like, "Hi, Scotty." And her face just dropped, and my stomach just dropped, because I've had that phone call before with my dad. And I said, "Hey, babe." And he said, "Kimberly," and I could hear it in his voice. And he's like, "He's gone." And I'm like, "Who's gone?" He's like, "Keaton. Keaton is gone. He's gone." And I just dropped to my knees in Bed Bath & Beyond. And I just said, "Oh my God, oh my God." And it was like this plea and a prayer and I mean, I've got chills all over my body. And this disbelief and this, it can't be true. It couldn't be true. And so you know how it is, like in those next, like, it's just a blur. Like, you're literally now on autopilot. And I don't even know if my soul was even in my body.
Yeah,
I was just like one foot in front of the other, and
I was
you're
gonna
just
say,
doing what you can do.
kind of out of body, but
It is.
also in body. Like, you're able to move, but it's almost like a movie or a dream.
It is.
And then look, I don't know if 10 years for you, I don't know what it's like for you, but like now it's just hard to remember what was real, what was just in my mind.
Right.
What it just gets fuzzier and fuzzier,
It
at least for
does.
me. But some parts are so crystal clear.
Mhm.
Some parts are so vivid that I'd never forget.
Yeah. And that point was, I remember that. I remember the drive down to Powell, because my brother and sister-in-law came, and the three of us and my mom drove down. And I remember when the coroner's van was going the other way. They had to really, like, with the lake water and stuff. So Scott, I'm kind of jumping around here. Scott was at the clinic down there. He waited for 6 hours for someone to come to pronounce Keaton dead, because there was nobody to do that. And so he had the opportunity to be with Keaton's body, which sounds gruesome, but it's not. Like, I didn't have that opportunity, because they had to get him back, and they had to get him taken care of because of the lake water, because it would anyway. And so I didn't ever get to hold or touch my baby before he was in his casket. But I remember getting down there. They had gotten us hotel rooms, and I remember hugging Scott, and he was still in the clothes, because and we laid awake silent, like most of the night, just awake. And I know you know this feeling. There is a silence that happens after you lose somebody like that. Like I feel like there was always just this silence. Even in a room full of people, there's just this blank space.
Almost like there'd be an echo.
Yeah.
If someone talked.
Yeah. It's the strangest feeling. And I just remember that feeling so clearly as well. And I remember him apologizing to me, and it never occurred to me to blame him in a million years. It never occurred to me to blame him. And so it was just kind of one foot in front of the other from there on out.
The funeral. Do you even remember it? Was it
parts,
bits and pieces?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like. I remember after the funeral, I'm like my mind didn't get past that far in my life. I remember like literally like I got in the back of my brother's car, and I spoke at the funeral. He said, "You did really good," and then it was like,
now what?
I'd say I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And still kind of don't.
You're still super early on, though.
Yeah.
And I do, like, I want to mention this, and that is that, like, the first year is really hard, and I'm watching my brother and sister-in-law go through that right now. The first year is really hard, and it's just so heavy, and you've got all the firsts. It's the first this, and the first
birthday,
Christmas, and the first, like, all of the, all
I
of
remember
those things.
first time I took Blue to school.
Right?
Oh,
yeah.
Bawling driving away.
Yeah.
Like, Cordy, I'm so sorry you can't see this. Like, I should also be dropping off Riggin. Like, yeah.
Brutal. But I will say, I almost felt like the second year was harder.
I agree. Why? I know why it is for me.
I think, again, because everyone's gone on with their lives, and because you think you've gotten through, it's that expectation of, oh, okay, I've gotten through the firsts. Like, so that's the hardest year, so it's going to be okay now. Well, the silence is still there. They're still not there. And also at that point, I almost feel like there's this expectation that now you should be able to move on. And it's bullshit.
Yeah, because everyone else has. And you're like,
and they need you to. Like, they're so uncomfortable with your pain and your suffering, and they want to see you do okay. And so they're like, okay, like, and it's not like anyone ever said to me, okay, but it's this, and even inside of myself, like, gosh, shouldn't I be doing better than I am? But I feel like that second year was probably the hardest year.
Yeah, I think second year is, I think the amount.
Going into the third, right?
Yeah, right? Almost. It'll be 3 years this July.
Okay.
But the second year is reality. It's more, the shock has worn off a little bit, and it's, your mind goes from like, no way, to this is our life now. Like, what are we gonna do? And I was like, okay, like, I guess just accept the acceptance part. And
also, yeah, like you said, the shock is worn off. And actually, now that you're articulating that, I feel like the grief comes, and you aren't able to hold it at bay even as much. And I do feel like grief comes in waves. I'm sure you've noticed that. Like, it comes and goes. And no one talks about how excruciating, how physically excruciating that grief is. Like, that your body aches. Like, you just...
And, like, it feels like, you know how if you've been hanging upside down too long, there's, like, pressure in your head? That's what my head feels like all the time.
Yep.
It feels like I'm hanging upside down. Like, there's pressure on my brain.
Yep. And I literally think that pain comes in waves on purpose, because if we felt all of that all at once, I don't think our physical body could take it. I think we would expire. I think we would just die.
And it is, obviously there's stuff going on in your head, but there's physical parts of the grief that will mess you up for sure. And, oh man, what was I going to say? You said it so perfect. That reminded me of it. But I can't remember now.
So that second year, we're like feeling it. We're feeling it.
Oh, my second year, anger. I've had so much anger in year number 2. Like, at myself, at everyone, just mad. Just so mad.
So normal, so healthy. Feel it. Feel every bit of it.
What do you do when you get fucking mad? Like, Because right now it's not good. I say mean things to people I love, and it's not good.
Yeah, but they have grace for you, and I think you get a pass.
Oh.
I really do. I know that sounds
Well,
shitty,
I
but
do think that's how they view it. It's like,
they
okay,
do.
like,
Yep,
I
he's
love you
just
too.
and literally, this is me. We have to get that anger out. We have to get that grief out of our body somehow.
Yeah.
And anger is a healthier emotion than apathy. Anger is fuel.
What I'm not very smart. Apathy.
Apathy, blah. I can't do this. I'm the depression. Like anger comes now because anger is going to light a fire under you, and at least you're talking to someone, and at least you're feeling that emotion, and at least you're like, because anger has to come out. It has to come out. Whereas apathy is just like laying there in your puddle of sorrow and not
Yeah, I
giving a
think I
shit.
just go up and down, in and out of those.
Sure.
And then there's I was telling my sister, because my sister's been going through it a lot because her husband just blindsided her with a divorce after 17 years. So it's like, okay. So she's like, anyway, we're just kind of talking, and she's like, so how have you been? I'm like, Carly, it's kind of like some days I feel like I already died, and so I'm playing with house money. Like, let's just kick ass and let's do the most good we can, and we'll die and we'll be with them again. And I have moments of just positivity and like rah rah.
Sure.
And then other moments like, let's just be done now.
Yeah.
Like, we're good.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go up and down and everywhere in between.
Those rah-rah time, not rah-rah times even, but those better times, you'll start to notice that they're longer and the pain part shorter, and then the longer and the shorter. And the trick is not to, when we're in grief, we're really connecting with our loved ones. And that's how we feel them to an extent. And there comes a point where, we could connect and grieve. I know people who grieve for the rest of their lives, and you do, I don't know, I'm not saying this right. You do grieve for the rest of your life because you're never not going to miss them, right?
Right.
But now I connect to Keaton in love. Like, there's a point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling this horrible feeling as much anymore. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm over him? Does it mean that I don't love him? Does it mean that like your brain starts to go, what does this mean? Right? Because I've connected with him in grief for so long, but it just switches. And the like I said, the hard times become shorter. And I still, like 10 years down the road, I still have moments where I will break down and just ache and miss him. And then, but the love and the happy times and the functional times get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I would say,
No, because I've started to notice, because when I think of past memories of them, it used to just put me just crying or whatever. And now sometimes it's like I can think back and it's a positive experience for me. Like, man, like that was fun. We had a good time. So you
how
kind
do you
of
feel about that though? Is that,
Yeah.
is it bittersweet? Is it like, do you worry like what it means, or do you not really? Do you just embrace it?
I'm so just inconsistent. Like I'll have a good memory of them, and then 2 days later it'll make me sad, and it'll be the same memory. I'll be thinking of the same thing. But I think as this time's going on and I talk about it more and more, I am able to appreciate and love and be grateful for the life I had with them, and understand that many, many people don't even get a family.
That's true. But
And
you're comparing grief again.
right.
That's right.
And I love that you said that, because that's something that we say too. Like, you can't compare it. It's miserable for everyone, and it's different for everyone. Man, so I just love talking to you because you're just connecting with, because the anger thing, and then, so did you start like? Okay, let me gather my thoughts. So when did you? Hold on, I want to ask a completely different question. Actually. So the first year after the car accident, I just didn't want to talk about him, because you talk about him, it just hurts worse. It's like, okay, can't do that. Not gonna look at pictures, and then I just drink, drugs, numb the pain. Did you have any experiences like that? I mean, you've mentioned that you were really not doing good.
I was really not doing good.
What did that mean for you?
So, and I was living very, so I remember that year I think I mentioned that I've had a lot of trauma in my life. And so I've been off and on like antidepressants and stuff. That year I didn't take anything, and I did it really mindfully. Like, I want to feel this. I have to feel this. I, and I was living very LDS. And so I didn't partake. I joked all the time, like, gosh, I wish I wasn't Mormon so that I could freaking go get drunk, or like I would say stuff like that, ha ha
Mm-hmm.
ha, whatever. But for me, what it looked like was literally spending days and weeks in bed, not showing up for my family. Um, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. And yet it's interesting because people have talked about times when I did show up and they were amazed, and like, I don't remember those times. I just remember like being in
Sorry to be
hell.
loud, but I've just had similar
Yeah.
instances like that.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you were so strong, and oh, you were so this, and oh, remember when we went to this 4 months later? And I was like, nope, I don't remember that.
Isn't it just like, hey, like, I appreciate it,
Mhm.
but like, what else am I? There's not a whole lot of options.
Right.
Like,
Right.
this is my only
And we're
option.
just doing the best we can. So
Right.
so I'm so glad that people remember that I showed up in times. Good for me. And then my poor family, who was just like, hey, mom, what's up? Like, are you with us? My poor daughter, and our son that lived with us. Yeah, and Scott, the other thing too that people talk about is how differently each spouse grieves. And Scott needed to be out with people and talking about it and going and doing, and I needed to be in seclusion by myself, just sitting in it and stewing.
Yeah.
That's why 80% of people get divorced.
That was exactly where I was going with this. Yeah, it's just grieving differently, and then just grief in general. Like, it's so hard to be anything with grief, let alone in a healthy relationship. Like, just both of you aren't very present anymore, I'm sure, just because this
You're
thing's
not.
weighing on you.
And he, as the like, he was trying to fix it for me. I remember a conversation, we talked about it not very long ago, but um, where he was trying to tell me something that had helped him, a book he had read or whatever. And I was like, you have to stop. Like, you literally have to stop. He's like, I'm just trying to help. I'm like, I get it, but this isn't helping. All it's making me do is feel shittier because I can't do what you're doing. You have to stop. And it hurt his feelings at first. And then he was like, oh, okay. And like, gave me my space, and things kind of, and we stayed married for 10 years, after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. I was doing a public speaking thing one time, and sometimes there's like a Q&A after, and one question was asked: losing my family, like, your story is basically my biggest fear. What can I do to prepare, plan, or something like that? Like, what can I do? I'm like, dude, you can't.
You can't.
That's why it's grief. Like, there's no book you can read to prepare. Like,
And don't want to.
yeah, like, you
Don't want to.
just
Don't live in that. Don't live in that fear.
And I think
Oof.
back to the worry that people have, like, okay, when's the other shoe gonna drop? It's like, dude, don't worry, it will drop eventually. And 90%, like, what are you gonna do about it? But yeah, I didn't know how to answer his question, but that's what came out. Like, dude, like, you're gonna be screwed.
Yeah.
There's no preparing you for it. It's
There's
gonna
not.
blindside you and kick your ass.
So choose it. Like, choose whether to like live in fear of it,
Yeah.
and let it like stunt your life and your happiness and your growth and your experiences with your family, or B, like, live your life.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question, and then maybe we can get into movies, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. That went fast.
Yeah. Where are we at? We're at 50
I was
minutes.
gonna say super fast. I was thinking, like, there's just a lot of just wisdom. Like, I've never ever heard someone say anger is a healthier emotion than apathy, and that
Yeah,
I've
like,
never heard that like hit me.
what, like, why, like, What do you think it means? Like, what do you mean?
Because apathy,
Because anger means what? Doing, maybe? Like you're going to do
You're
something.
gonna do something. And also, it, like I said, it demands to be felt. Apathy is numbing out. And in order to get through grief, you have to feel it.
So it's kind of like anger is more of the buffalo, cow is more of
Yes,
the apathy,
there you
maybe,
go.
if you want to get back
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
the
that's
analogy.
exactly
like,
right.
and I really think that people who are apathetic, like we've had people who are deal with suicidal ideation and lost
I did
people
that.
through that. And you want a dangerous emotion, apathy, like that. As soon as you
Like you don't
don't
matter.
care,
Nothing.
you're in
yeah.
trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, see, that's what I had blue though, so I never really got. I mean, I've been in spells of apathy, I guess, but
Yeah.
having blue never made me cross that line when it came to suicide ideation or anything. But I want to yeah, you explained grief very well, and so far we've talked about how shitty it is, but there are good parts of grief. Do you want to? Is there anything that you've experienced 10 years grieving over Keaton that like grief's made you appreciate, or because one thing I always tell people when I give them the buffalo and cow analogy is, listen, both animals get the shit storm. They're both going to experience that. It's not like one doesn't experience it. They both experience the storm. Buffaloes just get the benefit of the storm. Cows just get the terrible part of the storm.
Yeah.
So like there's some things I've learned in my life that I've gotten from my grief that I'm not sure I would have gotten any other way. And I do think grief is beautiful at times. And as Michael Scott said, back to The Office, there is a such thing called good grief. So what do you got to say about good grief?
I mean, it's cliche, but grief means that I loved hard.
Yeah, like it shows you how much you love them.
Yeah.
Because there's a quote, but it's like grief is you have all this love, but nowhere to send it anymore. So it just internally goes right back into your soul and everything.
It's true. But yeah, it means that I loved. It means that I believe a lot in the law of opposition. So for as much as I have grieved and lost and loved, I've also have that capacity for joy and happiness and peace as well. And I think grief is I don't think staying in any negative emotion is the best thing to do, but grief, it just means that I'm connected to that person forever.
Yeah. Is there a part of you that kind of wants to hurt and be sad forever? Because that's like your connection to him?
Not anymore. And that's what I was saying. Like,
No way, really?
yeah, not anymore.
Because I tell people I'm a believer in this. So
That's what I'm talking
you're
about.
connected with him through love and
Through
joy
love
now.
and joy.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
Gives me a lot of hope. Hope's the worst thing though, and the best thing.
And the best thing. It's true.
But also the worst thing.
Just it's not like there's a difference between hope and expectation, right? Hope, you can like have hope, have like an idea of what you would like it to look like, but just like if you don't have any expectations, and you can't have expectations in grief at all, like literally it's the worst thing for you. Just let it happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
The waves are happen. The ride's gonna happen.
See, you're kind of reminding me of my buddy Craig from Australia. He lost wife, 2 kids, saw him burn alive in the car. And that was 1997. And Kimberly, I'm not kidding you. Like we talk all the time. Like I'll tell him about your story or whoever's story, and he'll always say, "Oh, it's fucking beautiful." I'm like, Craig, it's not beautiful at all. It's terrible. He's like, it's fucking beautiful. Like he just has this. I'm like, what are you? He's like, the magic, the synchronicities, Mason, feel it, the energy, the power. I'm like, Craig,
yeah.
you're the man. I'm just not there yet, maybe.
Not yet.
Yeah. I love it, Kimberly. We should have you on. You should. What do you do for work? What's your job? You should be like a therapist, grief counselor.
I can be a good friend.
Yeah. Top 3. Well, hold on. Are we good? Anything else you want to get off your chest about grief? 1090, Keaton. Are we good?
No, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity. It feels like a way to honor him. And
For
so
sure.
Thank you.
I just remember sometimes I drive away. I'm like, damn it, I forgot to ask that. Or I should have said this. Or that's what I forgot to say. See,
that would have been awesome.
When you don't plan anything It's beautiful because you get into these conversations that you'll never ever get in, and it's authentic and it's real and it's great. But the bad side is you forget
miss some
about
stuff.
we wanted to do this and that, but it goes where it goes.
I think it went well.
Okay, top 3 favorite movies of all time, Desert Island style. You only get 3 left. Here we go.
Okay. Some Kind of Wonderful
Never seen that one.
from in the 80s. Yep, I've seen it a billion times. And
Some
I
Kind
still
of
will love it.
Wonderful.
Yep, it's so 80s.
Is
And
it?
it's just
What
so
is
good.
what is it about? Real quick. Like,
It's that whole like popular girl, not popular boy. They go out
oh.
on a date.
Is this where he
and
has
the
a radio
best
above his
friend-
head?
No, but
Oh,
that's another
getting
good one.
closer.
Yep, you are getting close.
Is this the one where he goes to the mall and he saves up money and he buys her?
That Can't Buy Me Love.
I'm getting
Yep,
closer.
you are getting closer.
All right, I'll
And
watch
he
it.
has a best girlfriend who I always wanted to emulate, and so I loved her.
80s and 90s, they had good
Yeah,
movies.
good movies.
Good movies.
Really
Good
good
acting.
movies. Yep.
Good scripts. And now it's just like Transformers,
know.
like turning into like, okay.
I think, gosh, there's so many.
This is the toughest
It's a
question I
really
asked you today.
hard- I know. I know.
Top 3. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And I pulled Some Kind of Wonderful out first, for heaven's sake.
You felt good about it.
I did feel good about it. I watched it a million times when I was a kid. I think maybe Life is Beautiful.
Haven't seen that one.
that
I've never
one-
been striked out before.
Okay.
So I better know this third one.
Okay. Transformers.
Good answer.
Oh, you got me. That was great.
Gosh, I don't even.
I watched, you ever seen Blazing Saddles?
No.
I watched that one again the other night. It was pretty good.
Is it good?
It's
a
like,
comedy, right?
it's like,
Gene Wilder.
it just obliterates racism. Like how ridiculous it is. It's a joke. It's literally a joke. But yeah, I watched that one the other night. It's good.
I love it.
Did Keaton like any movies? Because he was 5. That's when
He
my
was
kids
5.
start. Like Frankie got into Blippi, Blue loved Catboy, and the PJ Masks. He liked a whole bunch of stuff.
So when he was younger, Wow Wow Wubsy.
Okay.
And we watched the hell out of that. Oh my gosh. The worst. He loved the song Dynamite. Like, and we listened to that 5 million times.
There you go.
Wait, Dynamite by
Tao.
That's like our baby shark 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Oh, don't get getting nauseous with.
See, I was thinking like TNT, ACDC.
Cause I'm TNT.
That's on my like top 10 songs.
You like ACDC?
Love.
Okay, top 3 bands real quick, and then we'll be done.
Oh geez. No, I can't. There's just so many. There's so many, and I like such a broad range. I'm not even kidding. And it comes and goes. But that TNT song I will love.
I'm dynamite
for the rest of my life, for sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something else, and it was probably super profound, but we'll have to wait for another time for that.
Or no, we don't want to give it
I
profound.
can't
Let's
give
let it
up
simmer for
profound.
10
I
seconds.
have this gut feeling that
Blazings.
we will see Kimberly again.
Yeah, we should have her back on. Kimberly, thanks for coming on. Not easy to talk. Life's 10% what happens to you, 90% what you're gonna do about it.